Alan Clark stood in line at Harbor Fresh Market with his shopping basket. He needed only a few things: protein packs, some vegetables, and a small bottle of real Earth whiskey. The whiskey was a treat he rarely got since the Galactic Alliance started limiting supplies. His hands shook slightly as he waited. They were covered in scars from burns he got during the Battle of Proxima Centauri. 20 years in the United Earth Navy had left marks on his body. A woman stood behind him in line. She had blonde hair and wore an expensive suit that protected her from the changed air outside. She looked at the time on her wrist device and made a loud sighing noise. "Could you possibly move any slower?" she said in a voice everyone could hear. Alan did not answer her. After fighting in 3 wars against aliens, he knew which battles were worth fighting. His fake leg was giving him trouble again. It sent sharp pains through his body every few minutes. The leg was what he got from humanity's first meeting with the Draxian horde. "I said hurry up," the woman said again, louder this time. The digital name tag floating above her showed her name was Pamela Woods. Some of us have important meetings with people who actually help society, not just used-up space pilots living on government money. Alan stayed quiet. He slid his food card through the payment machine. The machine beeped and showed an error. The money for veterans was late again this month. "Are you kidding me?" Pamela threw her hands up in the air. "You can't even pay for your own food?" "This is exactly why we shouldn't waste resources on failed military operations when the Harmonious Collective offered to protect us." Some people in line looked uncomfortable but said nothing. Earth had lost the battle in the Orion area, so talking about military service was a difficult topic now. The store was quiet, except for the beeping of the payment machines and the soft hum of the air filters. Alan tried his card again. The machine beeped with the same error. He felt the eyes of everyone in line on his back. His leg sent another sharp pain up his spine. He took a deep breath and reached for his backup payment card. This was the one he tried not to use because it had very little money on it. "This is ridiculous," Pamela said. She looked around at the other shoppers. "Don't you all have somewhere to be? I have a meeting with the Planetary Resources Board in 30 minutes. A few people nodded, but most looked away. Since the Draxian attacks, many people kept to themselves. Food was more expensive now. Jobs were harder to find. The Earth government worked with the aliens who called themselves the Harmonious Collective, but most people didn't trust them. The store manager walked over. "Is there a problem, sir?" he asked Alan. "His card doesn't work," Pamela answered before Alan could speak. "And he's holding up the entire line." The manager looked nervous. "I'm sorry, sir, but if you can't pay, I have another card," Alan said. His voice was rough from lack of use. He didn't talk much these days. Most of his friends were gone, lost in the wars, or moved to the off-world colonies. The manager nodded. "Please be quick about it." Alan reached into his pocket for the backup card. His hand shook more than usual. The pain from his leg made it hard to focus. The card slipped from his fingers and fell to the floor. Pamela made another loud sound of frustration. "For the love of... Can someone else take my payment while this man figures out his life?" Alan bent down slowly to pick up the card. His leg made a mechanical whining noise as he moved. The sound made Pamela look down at his leg for the first time. "Oh," she said, noticing the military-grade prosthetic limb partly visible below his pant leg. Her voice changed slightly, but then hardened again. "Well, the government gives you veterans everything for free anyway, right? Must be nice." Alan stood up with his card. He said nothing. The truth was much more complicated. The government had cut veteran benefits 3 times in the last year. The money went to the new defense systems instead, the ones designed by the Harmonious Collective. The aliens said the systems would protect Earth from the other threats in the galaxy. Many people, including Alan, didn't believe them. "Some of us work for a living," Pamela continued. "Some of us didn't choose to go flying around space playing hero." A child in the next line looked at Alan with wide eyes. The boy was maybe 8 years old. He wore a toy space helmet, the kind they sold with action figures of famous pilots from the wars. Alan gave the boy a small nod. The boy smiled back. At least the younger generation still saw the veterans as something other than a waste of resources. As Alan tried his backup card in the payment machine, he heard someone clear their throat behind Pamela. The sound was short but somehow got everyone's attention. "Excuse me," a woman said. Her voice was calm but had a strength that made the whole checkout area go quiet. "I believe I can help with this transaction." Alan knew that voice. He hadn't heard it in person for years, but he would never forget it. It was the voice that had guided him and his team through the worst of the Draxian invasion. The voice that had ordered him on the mission that cost him his leg but saved millions of lives. He turned around slowly, his military training making him stand straighter without thinking about it. Standing there in a clean blue uniform with star symbols on the shoulders was Admiral Nancy Peterson. She was the commander of the 3rd Fleet and one of the few high-ranking officers who had lived through the attack on the moon base. Admirals almost never came to regular stores these days. "Lieutenant Commander Clark," she said with a respectful nod. "It's good to see you again." "Admiral," Alan said quietly, giving a small nod back. Pamela looked confused, then annoyed. "There's a line here, and this man is holding it up with his payment problems." The Admiral looked at Pamela. Her face showed no emotion, but her eyes were sharp and focused. "I'm well aware of the situation, Ms. Woods. In fact, I made a special trip when my AI helper told me about what was happening here." She stepped forward and placed her own military payment chip on the scanner. "I'll cover Lieutenant Commander Clark's purchases today." The grocery store went quiet. Everyone watched as Admiral Peterson stood tall in her blue uniform. The stars on her shoulders caught the light from above. She kept her eyes on Pamela Woods, who now looked less sure of herself. "I don't understand," Pamela said. "What are you doing here? This is just a grocery store." The Admiral smiled slightly. "No place is just anything, Ms. Woods, especially when it involves my people." Her words made Alan look down at the floor. He didn't want this attention. After the wars, he had tried to live quietly. Most days he stayed in his small apartment. He only came out for supplies and his medical checks. The fewer people who noticed him, the better. "Your people?" Pamela asked. She looked back and forth, between Alan and the Admiral. "He's just a veteran with payment problems." Admiral Peterson's smile went away. "Lieutenant Commander Clark is one of the finest officers I have ever had the honor to serve with. And there is no such thing as just a veteran." The store manager stepped forward. "Admiral, this is unexpected. We're honored to have you in our store." He looked nervous but happy. "Can I help with anything?" "Thank you," the Admiral said. "But I'm here only to see Lieutenant Commander Clark, and perhaps to correct a misunderstanding." She looked at Pamela. Again, when she said this last part, Pamela crossed her arms. "There's no misunderstanding. This man was holding up the line because he couldn't pay. I have a right to be upset about that." The Admiral nodded. "You have the right to feel however you wish, Ms. Woods, but perhaps you should know who you're talking to before you speak." She turned to the growing crowd of shoppers who had stopped to watch. Everyone knew who Admiral Peterson was. Her face had been on news feeds many times during the wars. She was one of the heroes who helped save Earth when the aliens first came. "For those of you who don't recognize Lieutenant Commander Clark, perhaps you should," the Admiral said, her voice carrying through the store. 12 years ago, when the Draxian mothership threatened to use its gravity weapon against North America, it was Clark who flew the only working shuttle through their defense system. People looked at Alan with new interest. He wished he could disappear. The Admiral was talking about things he tried hard not to remember. When his weapons stopped working, the Admiral continued, Lieutenant Commander Clark manually broke the shuttle's special fuel field and set it to crash into the Draxian weapon. He jumped out with only seconds to spare. He was badly hurt by the radiation and lost his real leg in the process. Pamela's face began to change as the Admiral kept talking. The damage to his nerves means his hands will never stop shaking. The same damage means he can't get regular civilian jobs. The same damage that makes his pain device act up regularly. The Admiral's voice stayed even, but everyone in the now silent store could hear her clearly. His actions that day saved about 83 million lives. That includes, according to home records, your parents' house in Denver. Pamela's mouth opened, but no words came out. The boy with the toy space helmet looked at Alan with even bigger eyes than before. An old man near the back of the crowd stepped forward. "I lived in Denver then," he said. "I remember that day. They said a brave pilot stopped the attack, but they never gave us a name. Most of what we do remains secret," the Admiral said. "For good reasons." Alan finally spoke up. "Admiral, this isn't necessary. I was just trying to buy some food." "It is necessary, Clark," she said. Her voice softened a little. "Too many people have forgotten what happened and who stood up for them." She reached into a pocket on her uniform and pulled out a small round device. When she pressed a button, the device lit up and showed a three-dimensional picture in the air. It was a map of stars with red and blue marks on it. "What none of you know is that 3 months ago, scouts from the Kari Dominion entered our solar system," the Admiral said. "The Kari, unlike the Draxians or the Harmonious Collective, don't talk or make deals. They just take over." People began to whisper to each other. This was new information that had not been on any news feeds. A small team of experts was put together to stop this threat before it could report back to its leaders. The mission had only a 10% chance of success. The Admiral nodded toward Alan. Lieutenant Commander Clark volunteered, even though he was officially retired and medically released. He led the operation. The floating picture changed to show video from a battle helmet camera. It showed a short, violent fight in the darkness of space. There was no sound as explosions lit up the empty black around them. The Kari scout was stopped. All signs of human resistance were destroyed to make Earth look helpless and not worth the effort to attack. And Clark here took a plasma shot through his shoulder to make it happen. Pamela had gone completely white. That's why his veteran benefits were late. He's been in a military healing tank for the past 6 weeks and was only let out yesterday. The paperwork hasn't caught up yet. Alan looked at the Admiral with surprise. He had not expected her to share so much classified information, but he understood why she did it. People needed to know what was happening beyond Earth's protective shields. They needed to understand that the peace they thought they had was really hanging by a thread. "I apologize, Lieutenant Commander," Pamela said quietly. Her face was red with shame. "I didn't know." Alan nodded. "It's fine," he said simply. He wasn't angry. He understood why civilians were frustrated. The wars had taken so much from everyone, and the government kept many truths hidden to avoid panic. The Admiral put the projection device away and looked at Alan. "The reason I came to find you isn't just about this situation, Clark. I have news for you." Alan felt a chill go down his spine. He knew that tone in her voice. It was the same tone she had used years ago when she first asked him to fly that suicide mission against the Draxian mothership. "What kind of news, Admiral?" he asked. She glanced around at the crowd of people listening. "Perhaps we should step outside to discuss it," the store manager quickly spoke up. "You can use my office if you need privacy." "Thank you, but that won't be necessary," the Admiral said. "Lieutenant Commander Clark's groceries are taken care of, and now I need to borrow him for a matter of national security." The words national security made everyone stand a little straighter. Those words had not been used much since the Harmonious Collective had come with their promises of peace and protection. Alan put his shopping basket down. The whiskey could wait. Whatever the Admiral needed was clearly more important. "Lead the way, Admiral," he said. Alan followed Admiral Peterson out of the grocery store. The doors slid open with a soft hiss. Outside, the afternoon sun made him squint. It had been weeks since he had been in natural sunlight. The healing tank room had only artificial lights. "Your timing was good, Admiral," Alan said as they walked across the parking lot. "Another minute and I would have had to use my emergency credit chip." The Admiral looked at him. "It wasn't timing, Clark. We've been monitoring you since you left the medical center." Alan stopped walking. "Monitoring me? Why?" Instead of answering, the Admiral pointed to a dark blue vehicle parked at the edge of the lot. It wasn't a regular civilian car. It was a military transport with the United Earth Navy symbol on its side. "We need to talk," the Admiral said. "And not here." They walked to the transport. A driver in uniform sat inside. He saluted when he saw the Admiral. The back door opened automatically as they approached. "Get in," the Admiral said. "We don't have much time." Alan hesitated. His years in the service had taught him to be careful, even with people he trusted. Maybe especially with people he trusted. "What is this about, Admiral?" "I'm retired. Medically discharged. Whatever you need, there must be active duty officers who can help." The Admiral's face became more serious. "There are some missions that require specific experience." "Your experience, Clark. Now please get in the transport." Alan climbed into the vehicle. His leg made it awkward, but he managed without help. The Admiral got in after him. The door closed with a solid thunk. The inside of the transport was cool and smelled new. The windows darkened automatically, hiding them from view. "Take us to command," the Admiral told the driver. The transport started moving smoothly. Alan looked at the Admiral. "Is this about the Kari Scout?" "Yes and no," she replied. "What I'm about to tell you is classified Level 9. Do you understand what that means?" Alan nodded. Level 9 meant that only the highest military leaders and the President knew about it. Level 9 meant that if he told anyone, he would be locked away forever. "I understand," he said. The Admiral pressed a button on her wrist device. A small light on the ceiling turned green. "The transport is now secure from listening devices. We can speak freely." She turned to face Alan. "The Kari Scout you helped neutralize 3 months ago wasn't alone. Our deep space monitors have detected a larger Kari fleet gathering at the edge of our solar system. They're being careful, staying just out of range of the Harmonious Collective's sensor network." Alan felt his mouth go dry. "How many ships?" 17, that we can confirm. Possibly more hiding behind Jupiter's moons." 17? Alan's voice was barely a whisper. "The scout ship nearly killed my entire team, and that was just one small vessel." The Admiral nodded, "Which is why I've been authorized to tell you something else. Something about the Harmonious Collective." Alan waited. The transport hummed quietly as it moved through the city streets. "They knew," the Admiral said finally. "The Harmonious Collective knew about the Kari Scout before it entered our system. They knew and they did nothing. How is that possible? The Collective is supposed to be protecting us. That was the deal after the Orion conflict." The Admiral's face showed no emotion, but her eyes were hard. "The deal was a lie, Clark. We've intercepted communications between collective ships. They aren't protecting Earth, they're preparing it." "Preparing it? For what?" "For the Kari. The two alien groups aren't enemies as we were led to believe. They're working together. The Collective weakens planets, gets them to lower their defenses, share their technology. Then the Kari come in and take whatever they want." Alan stared at her. The implications were enormous. Earth had signed treaties with the Harmonious Collective, had shut down military operations, had shared resources and technology, all based on promises of protection. "How long have you known this?" he asked. "We've had suspicions for over a year. We got confirmation 3 weeks ago when one of our spy drones recorded a meeting between Collective and Kari representatives near Saturn." Alan leaned back in his seat. His leg was throbbing more than usual. "Does the President know?" "Yes. But most of the government doesn't. The Collective has supporters everywhere. People who believe they saved us from the Draxians. People in powerful positions. So what's the plan? If we can't trust the Collective and the Kari are coming, what do we do?" The Admiral smiled slightly. It wasn't a happy smile. "That's why I needed to find you. You weren't just being monitored for your safety, Clark. You were being evaluated." "Evaluated for what?" "Operation Sundown. A mission to stop the Kari before they can launch a full invasion." The transport turned onto a wide road that led away from the city. In the distance, Alan could see the massive wall that surrounded the military base. "Why me?" he asked. "I'm broken, Admiral. My hands shake. My leg barely works. I'm not the same soldier I was 12 years ago." "No, you're not," the Admiral agreed. "You're something more valuable. You're a survivor who's faced the worst and still volunteered for that Kari scout mission. And you succeeded. She reached into her uniform jacket and pulled out a small metal badge. It was shaped like a shield with a star in the center. Alan had never seen it before. This is the Normandy Initiative, the Admiral said. A secret program to build a defense force outside the collective's knowledge. Ships, weapons, and soldiers, loyal only to Earth. We've been recruiting quietly for the past 6 months. She handed the badge to Alan. It was heavier than it looked. The President has authorized me to tell you that your request to rejoin active service has been approved. Your medical discharge has been overridden due to special circumstances. Alan looked at the badge in his shaking hand. I never made such a request. I know, the Admiral said. I made it for you. The Normandy Initiative needs commanders with your experience, Clark. People who understand what we're facing. People the troops will follow. The transport slowed as it approached the base gates. Guards stepped out to check their identification. What exactly would I be commanding? Alan asked. A ship, the Admiral replied. One of the new ones we've built in secret. It's called the Defiance. The gates opened and the transport moved through. Alan looked out the window at the military base. It seemed busier than he remembered. More people, more vehicles, more energy in the air. How long do we have? He asked. Before the Kari attack? Our best estimate is 2 weeks, maybe less. 2 weeks. It wasn't much time to prepare for an invasion, especially with the Harmonious Collective working against them from the inside. What about the public? Will they be told? The Admiral shook her head. Not yet. It would cause panic, and the Collective would know we've discovered their plan. The transport stopped in front of a large building with no windows. Armed guards stood at the entrance. This is our chance, Clark, the Admiral said. Perhaps our only chance to save Earth. Will you help us? Alan looked down at the badge in his hand. Then he thought about Pamela Woods and the other people in the grocery store. People who had no idea what was coming. People who would die if the Kari invasion succeeded. His hand closed around the badge. When do we start? He asked. The Admiral smiled. A real smile this time. We already have. Alan stood in the command center of the Defiance. It had been 7 days since his meeting with Admiral Peterson. 7 days of briefings, medical treatments, and preparations. His leg had been fixed with new parts. His hands still shook, but not as badly as before. The ship around him was like nothing he had ever seen. Smaller than the big warships he used to serve on, but faster and with better weapons. The metal walls gleamed with a blue shine. The computers hummed with quiet power. Status report, Alan said to the bridge crew. There were 12 people working, at different stations. All of them were veterans like him, people who had fought in the wars and survived, people who understood what was at stake. All systems ready, Commander, said Susan Bell, his second in command. She had been a pilot during the Draxian invasion. Now she was in charge of ship operations. The crew is at full strength. Weapons are charged. Shields are at maximum. The other ships? Alan asked. Vigilance and Courage are in position, Susan said. They're waiting for your signal. Alan nodded. 3 ships against 17 Kari vessels. The odds were not good, but they weren't fighting alone. The Admiral had shown him the full plan yesterday. Operation Sundown had more surprises ready. He walked to the main viewing screen at the front of the bridge. It showed the empty space near Jupiter where they were hiding. The giant planet's storms swirled below them, red and orange against the blackness of space. Any sign of the collective patrols? He asked. A young man at the sensor station shook his head. No, sir. They're still focused on the outer system, just as the Admiral predicted. That was good news. The Harmonious Collective had ships patrolling the solar system, supposedly looking for threats. In reality, they were preparing for the Kari arrival. But they didn't know about the Defiance or the other Normandy ships. The Earth ships were using new technology that hid them from collective sensors. Alan's communicator beeped. He touched the small device in his ear. Clark here. It's time, Admiral Peterson's voice said. The Kari fleet is moving. They'll reach Jupiter's orbit in 2 hours. Alan took a deep breath. Understood. We're ready. Remember the plan, Clark. Don't engage until they're past the moon of Europa. We need them committed to the approach. Yes, Admiral. And Clark, if this works, you'll be remembered as heroes. If it doesn't... She paused. Then no one will. No, you tried. The records will be erased. Alan understood what she was saying. If they failed, the government would deny Operation Sundown ever existed. It would be too dangerous to admit they had gone against the harmonious collective's wishes. We won't fail, Alan said, though he wasn't sure if he believed it. The communication ended. Alan turned to his crew. They were watching him, waiting for orders. He saw fear in some faces, determination in others. They all knew this mission might be their last. The Kari fleet is on the move, he told them. We have 2 hours to final positions. Susan stood up straighter. Rules of engagement, sir? We wait until they pass Europa. Then we hit them from behind while the ground-based weapons target them from the front. He looked around at his crew. This is what we've trained for. To protect Earth one more time. 2 hours felt like forever, and no time at all. Alan used the time to check every system on the ship again. He visited the engine room, talked with the weapons team, made sure everyone was ready. His leg hurt less than usual. The doctors had done good work. As he returned to the bridge, Susan met him at the door. Sir, there's something you should see. She led him to her station and showed him a screen with numbers and charts. We've been monitoring Earth communications. There's unusual activity on all channels. The collective representatives are calling an emergency meeting with world leaders. Alan frowned. They know we're here? I don't think so, Susan said. The pattern suggests they're accelerating their own plans. They might be preparing to help the Kari more openly. Alan thought about this. If the collective revealed their true intentions too soon, before the Kari arrived in force, it might actually help Earth. People would see the betrayal and might rise up against the aliens. His communicator beeped again. Clark, new information, the Admiral said, her voice tense. The collective has announced they're activating a new defense system to protect Earth from an approaching threat. They're telling people it's a meteor shower, but we think they're creating a cover story for the Kari arrival. Are people believing it? Alan asked. So far, but that's not the worst part. The new defense system they're activating, it's actually going to lower our atmospheric shields. They're opening the door for the Kari. Alan felt cold anger grow inside him. How long until the shields go down? 1 hour. They're doing it gradually to avoid suspicion. 1 hour. That changed everything. The original plan had been to wait until the Kari ships were committed to their approach, then catch them by surprise. But if the shields went down early, the Kari could send fast attack ships directly to major cities. Millions would die in the first wave. We need to move now, Alan said. We can't wait until they pass Europa. The Admiral was silent for a moment. You won't have the advantage of surprise if you move early, and the ground batteries won't be ready. If we wait, we lose the shields. We lose everything. Another pause. Agreed. New orders, Commander Clark. Engage the Kari as soon as possible. Delay them at all costs. We'll try to get the ground batteries online faster. Yes, Admiral. Alan ended the communication and turned to Susan. Change of plans, we're moving now. Tell Vigilance and Courage to form up on our position. The bridge crew rushed to their stations. Engines hummed louder as the ship prepared to move. What about the collective ships? Susan asked. If we reveal ourselves, they'll join the fight. Then we'll fight them too, Alan said. He felt strangely calm now that the waiting was over. Send a message to all crew, battle stations. Alarms sounded throughout the ship. Red lights flashed on the walls. The Defiance moved out from behind Jupiter's moon, no longer hiding, on the Deer. Main screen. Alan could see the distant lights of the Kari fleet. 17 warships moving toward Earth. Behind them, almost invisible against the blackness, were the shapes of collective vessels following quietly. Weapons range in 5 minutes, the tactical officer reported. Alan sat in the commander's chair. His hands gripped the armrests. They were still shaking, but he didn't mind now. Those shaking hands had saved Earth once before. Maybe they could. Do it again. All ahead full, he ordered. Let's show these aliens what humans can do when backed into a corner. The Defiance surged forward, with the Vigilance and Courage close behind. 3 ships against an alien fleet. The odds were terrible. But, Alan smiled, humans were good at beating terrible odds. The space between Jupiter and Mars lit up with weapons fire. The Defiance shook as enemy shots hit its shields. Alan held onto his command chair as the ship turned sharply to avoid a larger blast. Shields at 60%, Susan called out. The Kari main fleet is changing course to intercept us. Alan nodded. That was part of the plan. Draw their attention away from Earth. Make them focus on the 3 human ships that had appeared from nowhere. Status of Vigilance and Courage? He asked. Still with us, the communications officer said. Vigilance reports minor damage. Courage is engaging the lead Kari vessel. On the main screen, Alan could see the battle unfolding. The Courage, smallest of the 3 Earth ships, was darting around a large Kari warship, firing quick shots at its engines. The Vigilance was further back, launching missiles at 3 enemy vessels that were trying to continue toward Earth. The collective ships are moving, Susan reported. They're breaking formation. Alan watched as the alien ships that had been following the Kari fleet began to spread out. Were they joining the attack, or were they trying to get away from the battle? His question was answered when one of the collective ships fired on a Kari vessel. What's happening? Alan asked, leaning forward in his chair. Why are they fighting each other? His communicator beeped. Clark, are you seeing this? Admiral Peterson's voice asked. Yes, Admiral. The collective ships are attacking the Kari. Did we know they would do this? No, she said. Something's changed. We're picking up unusual communication patterns between the collective ships. It sounds like an argument. Alan watched as more collective ships opened fire on the Kari fleet. Some Kari vessels returned fire, while others continued toward Earth. Whatever's happening, we can use it, Alan said. New plan. Focus our attacks on the Kari ships still heading for Earth. Let the collective and Kari fight among themselves. Understood, the Admiral replied. Ground batteries will be online in 10 minutes. If you can delay the Kari that long, we'll catch them in a crossfire. Alan relayed the new orders to his crew and to the other Earth ships. The Defiance turned and accelerated toward a group of 3 Kari vessels that were ignoring the collective attack and still moving toward Earth. Bring us alongside the lead ship, Alan ordered. All weapons target their engine section. The Defiance's weapons officer nodded. Targeting engines. Firing in 3, 2, 1. The ship's main guns fired, sending bright beams of energy into Gay, the side of the Kari vessel. The alien ship shuddered and began to slow. Direct hit, the weapons officer reported. Their engines are damaged. But the Kari ship wasn't defenseless. It turned its own weapons toward the Defiance and fired. The human ship shook harder this time. Shields at 40%, Susan called out. We can't take many more hits like that. Alan's mind raced. They needed to keep these ships busy for just a few more minutes until the ground batteries were ready. But they couldn't just sit here and take fire. New approach, he said. Get us between those Kari ships and Earth. Force them to deal with us if they want to proceed. The Defiance's pilot nodded and began the maneuver. The ship swung around, putting itself directly in the path of the Kari vessels. They're charging weapons, the sensor officer warned. Brace for impact, Alan called. The Kari fired. The Defiance's shields flared bright blue as they absorbed the energy. Warning alarms sounded throughout the bridge. Shields at 20%, Susan reported. Her voice was calm, but her face showed concern. One more hit like that and they're down. Alan was about to give new orders when a message came through on the emergency channel. To all Earth vessels, this is Captain Lena Miller of the Vigilance. The Kari flagship has broken off from the main battle. It's making a run for Earth's atmosphere. We can't catch it. Alan looked at the tactical display. The captain was right. While they had been busy with these 3 ships, the Kari flagship, a massive vessel twice the size of the others, had slipped past them and was accelerating toward Earth. It would reach the planet before the ground batteries were ready. "We have to stop that flagship," Alan said. "It's probably carrying their invasion force." "We don't have the speed to catch it," Susan said, "and the courage is too damaged to help." Alan stared at the screen, watching the Kari flagship grow, smaller as it raced away. An idea formed in his mind. A dangerous idea, the kind that had nearly gotten him killed 12 years ago. "There's another way," he said quietly. "Get me a direct line to Admiral Peterson." When the Admiral answered, Alan explained his plan quickly. There was a long silence when he finished. "That's a one-way trip, Clark," she finally said. "You know that." "Yes, Admiral," he replied. "But it's the only way to stop that flagship before it reaches Earth." Another pause. "The President has given me full authority on this operation. If you're sure about this, you have my approval." "Thank you, Admiral." Alan ended the communication and turned to his crew. "I need 6 volunteers for a special mission. The rest of you will transfer to the Vigilance." Susan stood up immediately. "I volunteer, sir." One by one, 5 more crew members stood. Alan nodded at each of them, feeling a mix of pride and sadness. "The rest of you prepare for emergency transfer to the Vigilance," he ordered. "We have 10 minutes." As the crew rushed to follow his orders, Susan came closer to Alan. "What's the plan, sir?" "We're going to use the Defiance itself as a weapon," he said quietly. "We'll set a collision course with the Kari flagship and overload our engines at the moment of impact. The explosion should destroy both ships." Susan's eyes widened slightly, but she nodded. "And the escape pods?" "We'll launch them just before impact. If we time it right, the Vigilance can pick us up." He didn't mention that the chance of survival was very small. She already knew that. The next 10 minutes passed in a blur of activity. Most of the crew transferred to the Vigilance. The remaining 7 prepared the Defiance for its final mission. "Course is set," the pilot reported. "We'll intercept the Kari flagship in 4 minutes just before it enters Earth's atmosphere." "Engine overload sequence programmed," another crew member said. "It will trigger on your command." Alan sat in his command chair, watching the Kari flagship grow larger on the screen. Earth was visible behind it, blue and beautiful, worth any sacrifice to protect. 1 minute to intercept," the pilot called. Alan looked at the 6 volunteers. They were all watching him, waiting for his final orders. "Prepare escape pods," he said. "Launch on my mark, 30 seconds before impact." The ship continued its course, gaining speed as it chased the Kari flagship. The distance between them shortened rapidly. "They've seen us," Susan reported. "They're trying to change course." "Stay with them," Alan ordered the pilot. 30 seconds to impact. "Escape pods ready." Alan took a deep breath. "Launch pods now." Ship shuddered as the escape pods ejected. Alan remained in his chair. Someone had to guide the ship in the final approach and trigger the overload. Someone had to make sure the mission succeeded. "Sir." Susan was still on the bridge. "You need to get to your pod." Alan shook his head. "Someone has to finish this. Get to your pod, Commander. That's an order." Susan looked like she wanted to argue, but years of military training won out. She saluted him and ran from the bridge. Alan was alone now. On the screen, the Kari flagship filled his view. 10 seconds to impact. He reached for the engine overload control. As his hand touched the button, he thought about the people in the grocery store. Pamela Woods, the boy with the toy helmet. All the civilians who would never know how close they came to invasion. Who would never know about his final mission. It didn't matter. They would be safe. That was enough. "For Earth," Alan said, and pressed the button. The Defiance slammed into the Kari flagship. For one brief moment, 2 ships became one bright star in Earth's sky. Then that star expanded into a massive explosion that lit up space like a new sun. From her escape pod, Susan watched the explosion. Tears ran down her face as she saluted the bright light that had been her commander and her ship. On Earth, people looked up at the strange flash in the daytime sky. Most thought it was just an unusual weather event. A few, like Admiral Peterson, knew better. In a grocery store in the city, Pamela Wood stared at the sky along with other shoppers. The store manager came outside to look. "What do you think it is?" someone asked. "Probably just a satellite burning up," the manager said. Nothing to worry about. Pamela wasn't so sure. She remembered the veteran from a week ago and the Admiral's words about secret missions and brave soldiers who protected Earth without recognition. "No," she said quietly. "I think it's something more. I think someone just saved us all." Above them, the remaining escape pods from the Defiance fell toward Earth like shooting stars, carrying the few who would tell the true story of Commander Alan Clark and his final battle among the stars.